So far, this documentary is focused mainly on Alberta and the $8 to $12 billion that Alberta consumers were lost over the period of the last 10 years. The deregulation has been in place. I also wanted to show in this documentary how it affected a state in the United States, and for that example, we're going to use Montana. In Montana, they had an equally or even more disastrous situation there, and they didn't have $70 billion worth of investment in some oil sands to cover up the malfeasance that was done there. So here we'll delve into that, and here's a bit of an intro from 60 Minutes that done by Steve Croft.
For nearly 90 years, the Montana Power Company exemplified the very best of American capitalism. It provided cheap, reliable electricity for the people of Montana, excellent benefits for thousands of employees, and generous, reliable dividends for its stockholders. Everyone was happy, except for the corporate officers and their Wall Street investment banking firm, who decided there was more money to be made in the more glamorous and profitable world of telecommunications. The result exemplified the worst of American capitalism. The cheap electricity, the good jobs, and life savings of a lot of people are gone now, along with the name Montana Power. Its demise may not be the biggest scandal of our time, but to its stockholders, it shows how greed and outright stupidity destroyed one of the oldest and proudest companies in America. Montana is a state roughly the size of California, with fewer than 1 million people. What it does have a lot of is natural resources. Montana Power was founded in Butte 89 years ago by the Anaconda Copper Company to provide a cheap, reliable source of energy for its mining operations. And as Montana grew, so did Montana Power. It became one of the largest employers in the state and the first Montana company listed on the New York Stock Exchange. For years, it paid a dividend of 7%. Good stock?
Good stock.
Steady?
Steady, almost to the point of boring. Gary Buchanan.
Gary Buchanan is a former Montana legislator who runs an investment firm in Billings. Over the years, he's bought and held lots of Montana Power stock for his clients.
I've heard people say that my husband told me that I can sell anything but Montana Power. Keep the stock, keep the dividend.
What's more, its customers, which was everyone in Montana, had some of the lowest electricity bills in the country. The rates were regulated by the state, and in exchange, Montana Power received a monopoly. The only people not satisfied with this arrangement were the executives at Montana Power. In 1997, their lobbyists pushed a bill through the state legislature to deregulate the price of electricity and open up the market to competition.
Stands adjourned.
It was supposed to be good for consumers. They could decide who they were going to buy their power from at the lowest possible prices. But Frank Morrison, a former Montana Supreme Court justice who now represents the stockholders, believes there was another reason. He says Montana Power officials had already decided to get out of the utility business and were using deregulation to drive up the price of its assets.
Part of the plan involved going to the legislature and pushing through a bill right at the end of the session with no deliberation to deregulate power in Montana. They did that in order to make the generating assets more valuable on the open market. No price limit on selling power in Montana, therefore we can go out and sell these generators for more money.
Sure enough, within 6 months of the bill's passage, the company began selling off its generating assets. First, it sold the company's hydroelectric dams, coal mines, and power plants to Pennsylvania Power and Light. Next, Montana Power announced it was selling its transmission and distribution system and getting out of the business entirely. It was going to join the dot-com revolution by transforming itself into a high-tech telecommunications company called Touch America. The decision was made on the advice of its New York investment banker, Goldman Sachs, without consulting the stockholders.
Everybody was stunned. I mean, the shareholders that I knew were stunned. The employees that I know said that that came completely out of the blue to them.
Longtime shareholders like Marjorie Schmeckel and her brother Mike now owned a stock called Touch America, which had once been a small but profitable telecommunications subsidiary of Montana Power.
Do you think that most of the stockholders knew that their investment had gone from a sort of stodgy, reliable, safe utility stock to a very speculative, very risky telecom stock?
I would say that most of them knew there was some change, but I doubt that most of them knew how drastically different it was.
The company's plan was to take the $2.7 billion raised in the sale of Montana Power's assets and literally bury the profits in the ground. The new company, Touch America, was going to lay a 26,000-mile fiber optic network that would carry voice, video, and data transmissions across a dozen western states. It was the brainchild of Montana Power Touch America CEO Bob Gannon, who was born and bred in Montana.
Why do you think Bob Gannon and Goldman Sachs decided to go down this path, to get out of the energy business and into telecom?
He was tired of what he thought was a stodgy utility stock. He owned an awful lot of shares, and I think he wanted to be the Bill Gates of Montana. I think he wanted to get into a high flyer situation where he could go to $100 a share instead of sit there at 30. With Sachs, Goldman Sachs, it was simply money.
It didn't take long before things started to unravel. No sooner had Montana Power sold its dams and power plants than deregulated electricity prices shot through the roof, and Pennsylvania Power and Light began selling its cheap Montana electricity out of state to the highest bidder. Electricity prices in Montana doubled, then redoubled, then doubled again. Refineries, lumber mills, and the last working copper mine in Butte were forced to suspend operations because they couldn't afford their electricity bills.
If we were to continue to run, we were faced with prices that were $150 to $600 a megawatt hour. In other words, 5 to 20 times what we were paying before.
Greg Stricker, a manager at the mine, says it cost nearly 350 people their jobs. But that was just the beginning. By getting out of utilities and into telecommunications, Montana Power Touch America had bought into the biggest stock market bubble in American history, just before it burst. It turns out there was a lot more fiber optic cable in the ground than there were emails and phone calls to travel on them. And the billions of dollars buried in the ground are now worth pennies on the dollar, just like the stock.
It seems counterintuitive, and I will say the word stupid, to sell off the business that you know that is generating an income for thousands of employees and providing a steady rate of return for shareholders for a company that is now worth 53 cents a share.
Actually, that was several months ago. The last time we checked, the stock was down to 33 cents.
Montana Power Company had 3,000 employees, and now a lot of those are laid off or transferred or working for different companies. It's had a devastating effect on Butte, and many of the retirees are wondering whether their pension benefits are secure. Their savings are certainly not secure, and there's a lot of uncertainty.
Rick Tim on top of that other one.
Jack Timmer, who worked for Montana Power for 27 years and retired 2 years ago, says he's lost $350,000 in his 401k. Timmer had to hang up his fishing pole and return to work. He now makes minimum wage driving and loading trucks for a tire company. And at the M&M, a 24-hour bar and restaurant that hasn't locked its doors since the 1880s, people are out for blood.
Either you guys got anything you want to say about Mr. Gannon and Touch American?
You can't say that. We'd be in big trouble, huh? They sold us out, is what they did. They sold the whole damn city out, really.
The whole thing was wrong, what they did. People here are losing money and they have no retirement now. They have nothing coming in. It's wrong. A company shouldn't be able to do that. I don't think anybody in Butte ever thought we'd never have Montana Power.
I'd have a hard time believing one guy could do that all by himself. It's a very big corporate decision, other people involved.
And a flat fee as financial advisor. It was also to be paid a transaction fee or commission on every asset that was sold.